Hello, everybody. I am hoping I am live on YouTube. This is my first time using a thing called StreamYard, and today I wanted to try a new feature or a new thing for my channel, which I've been thinking about doing for over a good year now, which is celebrating other INFJs, celebrating other empaths, HSPs, gentle souls, and celebrating the achievements that they're doing in how they're showing up in the world and leaving a positive impact on this world. So today, okay, sorry. This is going to have a lot of teething issues as I figure out how to do all of this. But today I wanted to introduce you to another Sam who is just absolutely incredible and amazing. And I'm going to have it enter the live chat now. Here we go.
Hello.
Hello, Sam. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Look at you getting this all under control.
Yeah, I'm hoping it's working. So Sam and Sam, Sam and Sam. No, I'm the other Sam. Us Sams have just recorded a podcast that Sam has been working on. And when we did the introductions, we had so many bloopers. And we were talking about how when we go live on the YouTube channel, we're not going to be able to edit out the bloopers. And yeah, and that this could potentially be complete chaos. But yeah, so I just
We
want
love
to say
chaos.
thank you for joining me and thank you for wanting to be a part of this chaos with me.
Yeah, I love chaos. Chaos is fun.
Okay, so okay, so Sam, I know that you're an INFJ and
Mhm,
that you're a HSP
mhm,
and that I believe you said you're an empath.
mhm.
Did you want to tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so empath is probably a newer word that I would use.
Yeah.
And actually so is HSP. I didn't know anything about it until my therapist brought it up,
Okay.
and sort of started realizing that a lot of my sensory issues were actually
Yeah.
connected to that high sensitivity.
Mhm.
But I learnt years and years and years ago, probably oh, maybe even like a decade ago, about
Okay.
being an INFJ.
Yeah.
And I remember like even over the probably the past 5 years after working it out,
Yeah.
I um, would keep taking the test, like retaking
Yeah.
it because
That's
I
like
was
me. Yeah.
yeah, I just was like, "Oh, yeah, but, like, what if it's wrong?" And, that sort of skepticism, but, yeah, I think it was a bit of a light bulb moment for
Mhm.
me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
people had always described me as a walking contradiction, which
Yeah.
is never a great thing to be known as.
Yeah.
I think I just could see differing perspectives. I just
Mm.
saw the world differently to my friends,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
And that
I
was
love
hard.
that you call it a walking contradiction because I remember that being one of the words I saw when I first learnt about being an
Mm,
INFJ was the
yeah.
walking contradiction.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I think it's often referred to as like the extroverted introvert.
Yeah.
Was I love people, and
Mm.
I love obviously my therapist, so I love hearing people's stories and talking to them.
Yeah.
But I also equally hate being around people,
Yeah.
and it sucks the life out of me at times as well, particularly
Yeah.
like social gatherings. So I think it's hard for people to reconcile that you can be two things at the same time and
Yeah.
two what seem opposing things at the
Yeah.
same time. I don't think
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense for some people.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought for most of my 20s that I was an extrovert because as
Mm,
a teenager and in my early 20s, I was very social,
yeah.
loved being around people, loved having a good laugh with people, loved deep and meaningfuls, like
Mm,
really just getting to the juice of people's lives, which is probably
yeah.
why I became a counselor.
Mm,
And then when I hit 25, I went through an extreme burnout
mm,
where I had to shut myself away from the world. And it was in that moment that I really started to learn about introversion and extroversion. Because my understanding of being an extrovert, what I thought was socializing, and
yeah.
introverts were shy. And I wasn't
Mm,
shy,
yeah.
but I learnt that I gained my energy from
Yeah.
being alone.
Yeah.
And as a 25-year-old, I was forgetting that aspect of
Mm.
needing to be alone.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
completely get that. I was on stage doing musical theatre, I
Yeah.
was in the debate clubs, I was doing the
Oh, I
public
love that.
speaking and,
Yeah.
all of that, and I loved it. I loved every second of it.
Yeah.
But what I loved more was the moment that I got to get home and just, like, breathe almost.
Yes.
And yeah, I think
Absolutely.
yeah, it takes a while to
Yeah.
sort of get out of that mindset that being an introvert is
Yeah.
about being shy when it's just about
Yes.
recharging your batteries.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
But
thank you for sharing how you discovered,
mm,
about being an INFJ. I remember for me, I was at work, and at the time I worked as a youth worker, and I was running a youth leadership program. And for one
mhm,
of the sessions, I organized a Maya Briggs lady to come to this session, and she did a little test on us, not the full test. And when I got INFJ, I had no idea about Maya Briggs or what it
yeah.
all meant. But I remember she was like, "Oh my God, you're an INFJ." And my work colleague, he got, I think, an ENFP or an ENFJ. And she was telling him, "Oh, you're like a natural born leader. You're great with people, leadership." And he was like, "Yeah." And I went home and cried because I really wanted to be
Oh,
the ENFP, and I read
yeah.
about the INFJ. I'm like, "Oh, this makes
Yeah.
so much sense, but I don't wanna be this."
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like it's never great when, I remember reading it for the first time and it's like less than 1% or, whatever the
Yeah.
percentage is, and I was like, "Oh, yikes."
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think anybody loves to be the rare personality type because, it gets
No.
misunderstood a lot of the time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But it did make me feel better as well,
Mm,
knowing why I felt like such a weirdo.
yeah,
And, like, even though I can make friends easily, this is more when I was younger as well and not knowing how to find my people, and I would just
mm,
try and be friends with everyone. I would never feel like I could quite fit in or
yeah,
felt understood, or like people got me or got my vibe.
mm,
And so
yeah,
reading about the personality type just made me feel like almost justified or vindicated for
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Absolutely. I will often I'm quite different, I guess, to the rest of my
Yeah.
family even, and so I will
Yeah.
often say that I'm a bit of a black sheep in the family,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and at the time when I found it out, I was still part of the church, which probably even
Ah,
more so reinforced that I
yes.
was different from the rest of the
Yeah.
people that I was around.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was, I think once I understood it more, it became
Mm,
validating, but I had
yeah.
to allow it to be validating. Otherwise, it could have just
Yeah.
made me feel like I was an other all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and other
Yeah.
that made me feel sad then.
Mm. Yeah.
I'm all about helping, or not, I can't make people go on their own journey, but I'm all about coming to a place where you have true self-acceptance of who you are and a true love of who you are, and celebrating all the different parts of yourself and celebrating your quirks and your strengths and even your weaknesses. Can I ask you, which parts of yourself as an INFJ do you just absolutely love being?
Um, I've always loved my ability to hold seemingly opposing views and to
Yeah.
it's really, really beneficial in couples therapy, when
Oh,
I
yeah.
have 2
So
people
Sam's
sitting
a
in front
couples
of me.
therapist. Can you
Yeah,
tell people that what you do? Sorry.
yes. So I am a therapist. I work in person and online, but I specialize in relationships and religious trauma. So
Yeah.
I find that it is super beneficial in work, but even just
Mhm.
in life, I find since sort of going through my process of deconstructing. And if people don't know
Yeah.
what that terminology is, it's basically the untangling of like core beliefs, essentially.
Mhm.
It's mostly sort of um, centered around religious beliefs and things like that. But essentially, it's just the
Yeah.
conscious choice to dismantle those beliefs. But that part of me that can think critically about something
Yeah.
and fully explore it and
Yeah.
understand all the facets of it and not
Mm.
going in one-sided.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love that ability to sort of just take in as much information about
Yeah.
something as possible.
Yeah. So essentially having that curiosity
Yeah,
of life and people
yeah.
and all situations, which is actually, I don't know if you practice internal family systems,
Not
but
really, but I know of, yeah, loosely parts work. Yeah.
yeah, so they say that your higher self,
Mm,
you're operating in your higher self when you have the 8 C's, and
mm,
one of those C's is curiosity.
yeah.
I feel like INFJs are pretty good at that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think
Yeah,
it's just that, tendency to wanna go, beneath the surface, like, to
yeah,
sort of go deeper,
yeah,
and to go deeper with anything or anyone, you have
yeah,
to be able to hold, differing views and think about things
yeah,
differently.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I think
yeah.
that
Being non-biased.
yeah,
Yeah,
um, but I also just love silence, and I love that I love silence and just,
yeah,
like, sitting in silence and
yeah.
or, just sitting listening to the rain and,
Mm,
there's a lot about nature and sensory stuff that my body doesn't love,
mhm,
but, I try to shift and pivot to the stuff that
yeah,
it does. Yeah.
yeah. You don't have to answer this. What sort of nature sensory things do you not love? I'm kinda
Yeah.
guessing in my head, but I don't wanna
So it probably
slip
comes
in
more it
a
probably
mother
comes
of
more
witches.
into my high sensitivity than being an INFJ, although
Yeah,
I probably would think that they go hand in hand
yeah, I
anyway.
feel like there's an overlap.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but, heat,
okay.
bright sunlight,
Oh, you wouldn't like where
loud
I live then.
yeah, no, I lived in Queensland for 6 months, and it was enough for me. It's beautiful, I love it, and I love to visit Queensland, but to live there, we went from humidity in Brisbane to the dry heat of, like, rural WA, where it was,
Okay.
like, 40-degree days every day in summer, and I
Oh
could not
gosh.
be more grateful to get back to the East Coast, where
Yeah,
not it was not like that.
yeah.
Um but yeah, so like bright lights. So if it's like really sunny or that, that awkward time of the day where the sun is
Mm,
like setting,
mhm.
um, it like completely wipes my vision pretty much. It's like
Yeah,
pretty much non-functioning at that point.
Yeah. I get
Wind,
that. I
yeah,
do get
wind is
that. Yeah.
incredibly destabilizing for me. I tend to I
Yeah.
don't have a great center of gravity with wind.
Mm.
Yeah, so it's and like which is probably not uncommon with high sensitivity, but loud noises, crowded places,
Yeah.
um, but but I revel in the overcast weather and the
Yeah.
rain and the thunderstorms and yeah, I love
Yeah.
more of that sort of um, dark and dreary. It sounds
Yeah.
like, but
You know what? Sis?
I don't see it as dark and dreary.
Yeah. No, I see a real beauty in it, but
Yeah,
I'll be honest, when I lived in Melbourne, I did not love the cold or the
yeah,
grey weather or the dark or dreary, but I absolutely love it on the
mm,
Sunshine Coast. So for
yeah,
people who don't know Australia, because I do know there's quite a
mm,
50% of my audience are from America.
mm,
Where I live, it's the subtropics, so it's quite humid. So I love dark, overcast, stormy days where I live, but it's also still warm.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I can still swim. So,
Yeah. So,
yeah.
see, then it just I my automatic reaction then is like, but then it's like hot and sticky, and if it's like for me, I want overcast, like max 20 degrees, which I don't know what
Oh,
that is in Fahrenheit, but max 20 degrees
yeah,
Celsius,
yeah.
which is sort of very sort of
Mm,
um, autumn or fall
yeah,
weather.
that's our
Autumn is
winter.
my jam. Yeah, I love
Yeah,
autumn.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
all of the
a where
colours.
I live, I love winter
Yeah,
because it's about 24 degrees
yeah,
Celsius, so it's still nice and warm, but I can wear a jumper and
yeah.
shorts and thongs. Thongs, by the way, sandals, not underwear.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know what they call thongs in the US. I know
Sandals?
in New
Jandals?
Zealand,
No, that's
well, I don't know. In New
yeah,
Zealand, they're jandals, I
yeah,
think,
yeah,
but I'm not sure about
yeah.
in the US.
Maybe someone could tell us in the comments.
Yeah, they're like these,
But
like yeah.
yeah. Well, okay, so enough about thongs and jandals and sandals.
Enter the chaos.
I know that you have been working incredibly hard on something for
Yep.
quite a while, and this week has been the launching week of it. Could you please share with us what that is? Because actually, before you share it,
Mhm.
I just want to tell you that you have completely inspired me with
Mm.
this. You have motivated me. I can see how much work you've put into it, and I just think that's amazing. And I want to celebrate you for that. And I'm just so excited for the world for what you're bringing out. So, could you share with us?
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, so I have the first of 2 podcasts launching this coming Monday. So I've got the
Yeah,
trailer up. It's out in the world. And it is called Inside the Therapy Room. So
inside the
basically,
therapy.
yeah.
I'm
So
gonna see if I can write a comment. So put inside the therapy room.
yeah.
Yeah, and after this as well, after we've finished the live, I'll put in the description all of your links so
Yeah.
that people can find your podcast and you as well on all your
Yeah.
socials. But yeah, tell me more about Inside the Therapy Room.
Yeah. So I guess it came out of just a conversation with my wife about how I guess there's still that stigma attached to
Yeah,
therapy, or
yeah,
that I call it therapist shopping, where like you just feel like you need to jump from therapist to therapist until you find the right fit.
yeah, yeah.
In the same way that you go from one place that sells jeans to another till you find
Mm,
the right fit.
mhm,
And once you get the right fit, it's really, really good. But it
Yeah.
can be really crappy until that point, and it can be
Yeah.
really defeating.
Yeah.
And it's really frustrating when people think that therapy is just sitting in a room and talking.
Mhm.
And, doing that is wonderful, but there is
Mhm.
much more diversity out there in terms of
Yeah.
the way people practice.
Mhm.
And so I just wanted to highlight private practice owners in
Mhm.
Australia and chat to them about what they're passionate about in terms
Yeah.
of the particular groups of people that they might
Mhm.
see. Like I, did an episode with you about working with
Mhm.
INFJs and introverts,
Yeah.
um, gentle souls, I think we clarified them all under.
Yeah.
But also about, different approaches to therapy. So I have a chat
Mm.
with a forest therapist and things like that, where not everything is in four walls of a room,
Yeah.
because we know that that doesn't work for everybody.
Yeah.
So I guess it's a bit of a two-pronged approach as to who it's aimed at. So
Yeah.
um, for anybody who is, I guess, in the helping profession, so therapists, social
Yeah.
workers, those who are studying that, or youth
Mhm.
work, community services, anything like that,
Mhm.
um, to learn about other approaches,
Yeah.
and equally to the rest of the population, because everybody else should be in therapy. So it's about, I guess,
Yeah.
being exposed to the diversity that is in the therapy world, and hopefully
Yeah.
minimize that jumping from person
Mhm.
to person to try and find that right fit. And hopefully people
Mhm.
will land in the room, whether that be
Yeah.
virtual, in person and
Yeah.
physical, or in the natural world, for people to find a safe place to land, with somebody
Yeah.
who's going to work with them in the way that suits them.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much.
Mm.
I just think that's such an incredible idea, and I love what you said about how crappy it can be until you find the right person, which make
Yeah.
it reminds me of a project that I worked on, oh, like 10 years ago now, and it was called No Wrong Door, and the idea was that when a young person walked into a service,
Mm.
sometimes it took so much effort and time for them to walk into that service,
Yeah.
and then they pour out their heart and they tell their story only to find out that it's not the right service for them.
Yeah.
And so then trying to find the right service is incredibly like heart wrenching, and then having to tell your
Mm.
story over and over. So the idea of the project I did was called No Wrong Door, in
Yeah.
that this isn't the wrong door, and we're going to help you get to the right service and kind of like hold your hand through that. And
Yeah, I
so
love
in a way you're like preventing that, or like helping prevent that
Yeah.
from happening, to expose people to all different therapists so that you can find the right match and fit for you, which is
Yeah.
so important for therapy,
Yeah.
to have connection with
Absolutely.
your
Because
therapist. Yeah.
yeah, and therapy's hard. Like, you wanna
Oh, yeah.
minimize the barriers, as much
Yeah.
as possible,
Yeah.
and so that it can be a place, of ease, not necessarily that
Mm.
it's easy, but a place of
Yeah.
ease.
Yeah.
And, even I get, people in other countries can listen,
Yeah.
because if there is, a forest therapist and,
Mhm.
a trans therapist in Australia, there
Mm.
is guaranteed to be one in your country. And so
Yeah.
it's just about going, "Oh, I didn't realize that people specialized in that," or "I didn't realize
Mm.
that that was an option."
Yeah.
Um, and so I think just pulling back the
Yeah.
veil of what actually happens inside the therapy room in an
Yeah.
effort to try and make it, I guess, a more approachable thing to
Yeah.
engage in.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
And the therapists that I've chatted with have been incredible. They're
Yeah.
incredibly passionate and
Mm.
skilled at what they do,
Yeah.
and so I love just, putting people on a platform to be able to chat
Yeah.
about what they love.
Yeah.
It's like secondary soapbox almost.
Yeah.
Um, I love
Yeah.
that. So, and, you know, I'm recording
Mm.
now for season 2, which will come out
Mhm.
a bit later, obviously, but
Amazing.
there is a whole lot of diversity out there that I don't think people
Yeah.
are aware of.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah.
A little
I
terrified, but
Oh,
excited.
no, it's gonna be amazing. I
Ah,
think it's gonna blow up. I feel
yeah,
really good about it for you. Yeah.
amazing. That makes
I
me feel great.
I was gonna say as
Ah.
well for the international listeners,
Mm,
except for the US people, so I'm really sorry,
yeah.
but you will find that many Australian counsellors can also see people
Yes.
worldwide. We just can't see people in the US or Canada.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but even the US have
That's not our
restrictions. That
choice. No,
yeah, I have
that's
so
our
many people
insurance.
exactly, and I
Yeah.
think as well, I know in the US, like a therapist in New York, they're not licensed to even see
Mm,
someone in California, for
yeah.
example. So I think it's just the way it's set up over there.
Yeah, the licensing is very particular. Like, you'll even see on
Yeah.
social media, people will specify, like, therapists will specify where they're licensed to practice and things like that.
Mm.
So, but yes, worldwide, with the exception of the US and Canada, but
Yeah,
they're 2 very big countries, and I guarantee there are
yeah,
people in your states who are probably working in these ways as well. It's just a
yeah,
matter of knowing that that type of therapy even exists to look it up.
exactly. Yes,
So,
exactly. Yeah,
yeah.
and yeah, like you said as well, different therapeutic techniques
Mhm.
is going to work differently for different people.
Yeah.
So I find with
Yeah.
INFJs, I tend to lean on internal family systems.
Mhm.
I feel like that resonates really strongly with many of the INFJs I see. And
Yeah.
so I've had my training done by internal family systems people in America.
Mhm.
And so if you're in America and you are looking for a therapist, I would recommend looking up internal family systems.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah,
I actually have, one of the episodes is on internal family systems, a wonderful
that's
therapist in
right.
Canberra, who I
Yeah,
know, and, yeah, so it's very
yeah.
interesting.
Is this Matthew?
No, her name's
Ah,
Steph Maris. No, but Matt's one of
okay.
the episodes as well. Matt's in
Yeah,
there, as someone who works with men, and
yeah,
fathers in particular. So,
yeah.
yeah, it's a really diverse bunch of
Mm.
people, and I would say that the group that I have in season 2 is probably even more diverse. So,
Wow.
I'm loving where it is going, and
Yeah,
not necessarily even knowing where it will land,
yeah.
in terms of, you know, there are people who are being recommended to me as a particular therapist. Who knew there was a thing called a horticultural therapist?
Oh, wow.
I
Oh,
know. Is that
that's
not the
pretty
coolest
cool.
idea ever?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm, in the process of
Yeah,
potentially, recording with her for season
yeah,
2. So there are just so many things out there
yeah.
that, you know, even as a therapist, I didn't know existed. And so
Mhm.
if I don't know that it exists, I
Yeah,
guarantee the rest of the population doesn't know either.
yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, I'm excited to
Mhm,
expose the world to the
mhm.
diversity of the therapy space, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
Well, I think what you are doing is so incredible, and I want to ask you a question, but for some
Mhm,
context. I have many INFJs and empath people leave comments on my channel
mhm,
saying that they wish they could do such and such, or start a business, or do this project, or non for profit, or whatever it is that they want to do to leave a positive impact on the world. Can I
mm.
ask you what like drove you to do what you're doing? What has helped you to get to where you are today? Because to me, you come across as a very confident, grounded, inspiring. Am I making you feel awkward? I do that to a lot of people.
No, I'm just thinking, I don't know that I've been, my wife would not call me grounded. Um, but I'm gonna take it.
Yeah.
Big question.
Yeah. What
Big
advice do you have for people listening who want to do something and leave an impact on the world?
Yeah, I think, for me, my why is always really important.
Yeah.
Why am I doing it? Anything that
Mhm.
I do, if I don't, if I'm just doing it for, likes or money or whatever
Yeah.
it is, it doesn't tend to have the same outcome. It doesn't feel
Mhm.
as comfy and as natural. So for me, um, my why behind doing something is
Yeah.
integral to
Yeah.
how I feel about doing it.
Yeah.
And so I would say, first of all, work out what your why is.
Mhm.
And that might mean sort of, looking at your values and your core
Mhm.
beliefs and things like that about the world so that
Yeah.
they're in alignment. Gosh, that's a
Yes.
tough word to say.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
actually have a video on the importance of INFJs operating in their
Ah,
values, and if I
amazing.
remember, I'll link the video
Yeah.
in the description after we've done this. But yeah, keep talking.
Yeah, I think so knowing your why is probably the most crucial part because that
Yeah.
tends to be what I bring myself back to when there are
Yeah.
moments where I go, I'm way in over my head here.
Mhm.
Um, but and this may not be a great counsellor-y thing to say. I'm gonna put that out there.
Alright, we're all
Um,
humans.
but I'm gonna say because I guess anybody who is doing anything of importance, I would think anything in the helping world
Mm,
is going to battle that imposter syndrome.
mhm.
And I think it's really easy to go, oh, I just need to not think about that. But
Yeah.
actually lean into it, I think is
Yeah.
probably going to do you more good than resisting it. Because I think when you lean into that imposter syndrome, it sort of can give you perspective and you go, oh, this matters to me. That's
Yeah.
why, like, this is important to me.
Yeah.
And let it lead you back to your values as opposed to it being about you not being good enough or not being
Yeah.
X, Y, or Z enough. So, yeah, I mean, that's probably not a super therapy thing to say, but
No, you're also a human, so,
yeah,
you
I
know?
think I think anytime we resist anything,
Yeah.
um, particularly for me, resisting just creates
Yeah.
I want to say resistance, but that's very wordy. Um, but it creates a barrier. It creates,
Yeah.
it stops you. It prevents you from moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're probably not two super practical things, but
Mhm.
um, I think just learning
Yeah.
is your lean into the INFJ curiosity and superpower of just wanting to absorb information and
Yeah.
use that because the more information you have, the better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, but I don't think there's any sort of perfect, three-step process.
Mm.
I think, yeah,
Can I ask something else and you can choose not to answer?
yeah.
That's okay. We've always got choice here. I personally have noticed you showing up in the world in a bigger and brighter way over the last couple of months, I'd
Mhm.
say. And I think I told you this outside of this, and I said I feel like there's been a fire lit under your I won't swear, your bottom.
Yeah.
What what's happened for you? Like, what sort of mindset shift has happened for you? And how do
Yeah,
you
it's
think that's
been
related to you being an INFJ as well, if at all?
yeah, I think, the last 12 months has been a lot, in our
Yeah.
household. My, I've not actually shared this publicly, so
You don't
oh,
have
no,
to share anything
it's
publicly if you don't want
okay.
to.
I just had that moment where I was like, "Oh, I've not shared this publicly."
Yeah.
We had been trying for a baby. My wife had fallen pregnant and had an ectopic pregnancy rupture, and she quite literally nearly died in surgery. She had lost so much blood, and so that sort of
That's really hard.
prompted, there was obviously a whole lot of grief and a lot of pain and
Yeah.
a lot of loss there. But I then had a surgery and I had complications from that surgery
Mm.
earlier this year, which led to I had to temporarily close the business, and
Yeah.
I was in hospital, I think, for 9 weeks all up,
Wow.
10 weeks. And essentially also nearly died, but it was a much more slower process. That
Oh,
it was drawn out and it was slow, whereas my wife's was like being rushed into emergency
yeah.
surgery. It was like immediate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas mine was, I just had specialist after specialist going, we don't know what's wrong with you.
Oh,
Um,
man.
and so, but essentially, I lost all sensation in my pretty much waist down, and so I needed to relearn to walk again, which is much harder than you expect it to be.
Yeah.
I
Damn,
think
you've gone through so much. I had no
that's
idea.
been a big
I
year.
knew there was challenges, but oh my
Yeah.
god.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think, my specialists still have no idea really what went on, and
Yeah.
there's still a lot of physical symptoms that are not being managed because they simply don't know what they are.
Yeah.
Again, being rare is not always fun.
No. Yeah.
My therapist, who specializes in high sensitivity, also is thinks that played a role in why the initial surgery became complicated, because my body was
Okay.
rejecting it.
Ah.
Yeah, so it's been quite a year, and
Yeah.
so I reopened the business. I think it must have been August, September-ish, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't really remember. Maybe August. And probably, had all grand intentions of going into work very slow and easing
Mm.
out the rest of the year. And I probably did everything but that. I,
Made 2 podcasts.
yeah, doing 2 podcasts. I created a workbook. I'm now trying to like develop training for therapists around religious trauma, and so I sort of like went in guns blazing, and my outlook probably shifted a lot, because I kind of, like I said to you earlier, like, what was the worst that was going to happen? Like, my year
Yeah.
had already been awful. Um,
Yeah.
like, there are weeks and weeks that I just don't even remember because I was so
Yeah.
unwell. So,
Yeah.
I kind of got to the point where I was like, you know what? What's the worst that's going to happen? Nobody reads it.
Yeah.
Nobody likes the post. Nobody shares it. Like,
Yeah.
there are bigger things in life. And I
Mm.
think, yeah, I just got to that point where I probably put aside all of those doubts and that imposter syndrome a little bit,
Yeah.
and went, you know what? I'm going to do things that I love and things that I'm
Mm.
passionate about, and to hell with the rest.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing because so many of us, when you show up in the online world, you can really get influenced by what the algorithm
Oh,
is
yeah,
doing, and if like things get shared or views or likes.
yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you impact just one person,
Mhm.
that's amazing. And I
Yeah.
can see that you are impacting people in incredible ways. Like,
Mm.
I'm so proud of you. What
Oh,
a year you've gone through.
yeah, it's been quite the year. Our household is very much looking forward to 2024. And we are
Yeah,
hoping for a better year.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean,
yeah,
I certainly am not somebody who would go like, the silver lining in the situation.
yeah.
I certainly am not that person. Like the year has been
Mhm.
really awful. And
Yeah,
if
you
good
felt the
things
feelings.
come out of it, then great. But I'm certainly
Yeah.
not going to be like, there was a reason that happened or
Mm,
anything like that. Because I think then that makes it okay, and it was not okay. None of it was okay.
no. Yeah,
Um, but yeah, it has, I guess, shifted my perspective for the
yeah,
better in terms of just sort of going, what is the worst that's going to happen?
yeah,
A bit of time, a bit of energy has been spent on something and it maybe didn't land to the way you intended.
yeah,
And if that's the worst that happens,
yeah,
then I'm pretty okay with that.
yeah, yeah.
So,
And I've
yeah,
learnt as well, when you put content out there and it doesn't land, then you just learn to
yeah,
adjust. And
yeah,
that's the only way you're gonna learn what
yeah.
works, is by doing.
Yeah, and I find
Yeah.
that ironically, the content that I find doesn't land is the stuff that I've, like, overthought, or I've, like,
Oh,
gone, "Oh, maybe I need to reword that a little bit," and I've almost spent
yeah,
too much time on it. And the
yeah.
stuff that I just put out because, something
Mm.
happens and I think of it and I go, "Oh, that'll make a great post," and I quickly whip it up and schedule it. That's the stuff that lands.
Yes, I that yes. On this channel, I have a video called "Conversations with INFJs in Therapy,"
Mhm.
and that has now got over 26,000 views. So
Yeah.
it's been my most popular video on this channel,
Mm.
but it was also my basically, when I did the video, I had to go do something with the family. I kicked them out to go to the park, and I was like, "I gotta film something." And I pulled out the camera and I just spoke whatever came out, which was
Mhm.
the video you see today. There was
Yeah.
no thought in it, honestly. I didn't overthink it. I didn't have time to overthink it. And it turns out that's been the most popular
Yeah.
video that I've done. And then there's been others where I've spent hours
Yeah.
writing a script.
I know. The
And it
wall is
goes over.
black.
Yeah.
It's so funny. Yeah, but, ironically, I think always the stuff that gets the most traction is when I put up photos of my dog. So, I think the overall rule is, dogs or pets make everything better.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Would you please be able to share with us how we can find you on the socials?
Yeah,
And I'll
so
also put it in the description, but yeah, where are you?
Yeah, so I
Yeah,
am mainly on Instagram. So I am on
yeah,
Facebook and well, it was Twitter, but X and Threads and TikTok, but primarily I live on Instagram. Um, it's just at Anchored Counselling Services,
yeah,
and that tends to be where everything goes first and foremost. Yeah,
yeah. And where can we find your podcast?
yes. So the link to the podcast website is in my bio on Instagram,
Yeah,
but you can find Inside the Therapy Room on any of the major platforms. So Spotify,
yeah,
Apple Podcasts, any of their offshoots, basically anywhere you get your podcast fix.
yeah,
If there is somewhere that you use that you can't find it on, DM me on Instagram and I will get to it. It will get on there. So,
Yeah.
but it is on the at least the two major, it's Google, Amazon, all of those sorts of things as well.
And has the first episode come out yet?
No, so the trailer is on there. The first episode comes out on Monday. And it's with a sex therapist. So I'm going in
Exciting.
guns blazing with a sex therapist and thought, why not?
Love it.
Yeah,
Yes.
she's great.
Yeah.
Naomi's great.
Yeah. And then I think the episode that I did with you, is that the week after?
Yes. Yeah. So you are episode 2. Yeah. So that will be, it'll be released weekly. For the first season has 10 episodes. And so first one is coming out on Monday, and they'll come out every Monday after that.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, and thank you for agreeing to come on my first live as a guest.
I love it.
Which I'm hoping to do this. I want to do this every week. Next week, I have someone who is a gut health specialist, and she's an INFJ. We do Muay Thai boxing together, and she's just incredible. I'm really excited for you to meet her. And then I'll be taking a break over Christmas because it's school holidays and it's impossible to do things on school holidays.
Yep.
But also maybe the kids will be somewhere else and I might be able to do something. But I'm intending that this will be a regular feature on my YouTube channel going into 2024. And so,
Good
thank you for
you.
being my first person. Yeah. I knew I could trust
Thanks
you
for asking.
figure out all the teething issues as well.
Yeah, no, I love a bit of controlled chaos.
Yeah.
That's great. That's good fun.
Oh. All right. Well,
amazing.
Thank you. I don't really know how to end this. So.
I'm assuming just stop.
Yeah, I think I got to end it. So
yeah. Bye, everyone.
Okay, see ya. Bye.